William Wallace had a quote when he said, "Aren't you afraid of dying?" And said, "All men die." And I didn't really like that quote, so I modified it, and that's my own quote. Yeah, yeah, all men die, but um, not all men are willing to live, and not all men are willing to live for the truth, nor are very few men willing to die for the truth.
Dr. James Thorp, welcome to the show, sir.
Dave, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be on with you and to visit with you this
A-
afternoon.
Absolutely. So, I was telling you before we hit record, I'm very interested in this conversation for several reasons, one of which is quite personal to myself. I have a wife who is expecting any day now. And so this is very timely for me personally, and I'm excited about this conversation. Just for those listening, really quick, who are you, sir, and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Jim Thorpe, and I live with my beautiful wife in Gulf Breeze, Florida, right adjacent to Pensacola. And so I'm a OB/GYN board certified physician. I'm also OB/GYN board subspecialty board certified in maternal fetal medicine, MFM. And most of you don't know what that is. There's not many of us around, but we focus on maternal fetal medicine. We do the high risk obstetrics.
Mm.
So I'm an old guy. I was honored to turn 70 years old this year, and I've been doing obstetrics, seeing high risk pregnancy for over 44 years. I graduated from medical school in 1979.
Wow. Well, first off, you look great for 70. I have to say, I hope I look as good as you do when I'm 70 years old. I'm about half that age. And the gray in my beard is indicating I may not look as youthful as you do when I reach your age, but I can still hope. So,
Well,
okay.
those are kind words.
Well, it's the truth. For those watching, they'll be able to see, but for those listening, Dr. Thorpe looks great for 70 years old. Uh, I want to start with this because we linked up through the wellness company who I've recently partnered with. Phenomenal company, and I can't say enough good things about them. I had Dr. Seek on my show fairly recently as well, and we had a great conversation. Uh, I was provided a fact sheet by the wellness company, and on that is a quote from you. And I just want to read this to my audience, and I want to have you reflect on that if you could, because it really struck me as being profound, and I think really hits at a lot of what you're doing. All men die, but not all men live, and not all men live for the truth, and not all men are willing to die for the truth. This struck me very deeply, Dr. Thorpe, because what I've observed, and I think what many people have observed over the past several years, especially, is that those who are in positions with the expertise to speak on many of the issues you've boldly spoken out on have not done so for fear of being ridiculed, for fear of being sort of castigated and excommunicated from the community of so-called experts, right? Uh, could you reflect on that a little bit and how that has played out for you over the last several years in the context of COVID-19 specifically?
Sure, I'd be honored to. There's kind of a long story behind that. Um, I'm a Thorpe, um, and my father really didn't really consider us to be Thorpes. He considered us to be McCluskeys, and that's his parental heritage, and that was mostly due to his absentee father. But
Mm,
um, I lost my father over a decade ago, and my mother many decades ago when I was a younger man. But my father went on a quest for, because I always asked my father, where do we come from? Who are we? When I was a kid, and he never paid attention much to it. And I said, well, who are, I know we're Irish or Scottish or whatever, but what did our ancestors do? And he says, oh, he'd always joke about it. It's like, because he didn't know. And, and, the McCluskey side of our family was really profoundly important to him.
Mm.
Always focused, very, very dirt poor, but from Michigan, always focused on on education in their family. Uh, I think his great aunt was the first physician who graduated from the University of Michigan Medical School way back in the early 30s. So
Wow.
it's very, very dirt poor potato farmer family up in Michigan, Pinckney, Michigan. But he'd joke. He goes, "Well, we probably came from horse thieves or something from Ireland or some stupid thing." Well, after my mother died in the early '80s, it rocked our world a little bit, and he went over to visit our relatives, and we found that we were direct descendants of William Wallace,
Oh, wow.
Braveheart,
Yeah.
and so I always had a calling. I've always been focused on military. I come from a long line of military heroes, including my father in World War II, the greatest generation. And my father always told me, he called me Jimbo. He says, Jimbo, you make your life count. And since we found out about the heritage, he goes, you make your life count. So yeah, I'm a McCluskey, and I'm William Wallace. And William Wallace had a quote when he said, "Aren't you afraid of dying?" And said, "All men die." And I didn't really like that quote, so I modified it, and that's my own quote. Yeah, yeah, all men die, but um, not all men are willing to live, and not all men are willing to live for the truth, nor are very few men willing to die for the truth. And I know that I am in all those categories because at several points in this life, I really didn't want to keep living. I wanted to die. And
Mm.
truth be told, thought about finishing myself off sooner through several of the tribulations that I've been through. Unfortunately, I didn't. And I realized that I didn't do that for a profound reason. God meant me to be here for a time such as this, being one of the only OBGYN, I think the only maternal fetal medicine doc in the world, standing up against these evil doers that perpetrated women purposefully. So I'm glad to be here, and I am re-energized with regard to my commitment to live for as long as my Creator wants me. But I'm sure as hell not afraid of dying or losing everything I have for truth, to stand up for my younger physicians, stand up for this healthcare system that is dead. It's corrupt. It's totally captured by a corrupt government. To stand up for our children and our grandchildren and our truth, to stand up for our Constitution as a former veteran, and most importantly, to stand for my Hippocratic oath, which I'm willing to die for. And it's very, very important for me, and I'm so honored to be with the wellness company. I love the people there. They're my family. And by the way, one of my partners, Peter McCulloch over there, by the way, is also a direct descendant of William Wallace. So we got some pretty mean, rough, tough warriors for truth at the wellness company. Paul Alexander, look at him. Lord have
Yeah.
mercy, right?
Yeah. Well, mean and rough and tough, but also incredibly adept, educated. And I mean, Peter McCullough,
Yeah.
yourself, and
William
it,
Mackus. What about Dr. William Mackus? Holy smokeroonies.
right, right. And that always struck me early on in the 2020s when you started to see individuals with this profound level of expertise, undoubted level of expertise in their particular field, specifically in medicine. Yourself and in Peter McCullough specifically being just targeted, whether it was um, regarding just, I mean, there was so much hand waving, and just whether it's the Great Barrington Declaration, incredibly talented and educated epidemiologists, virologists, physicians, all of these people signing off on this and just completely cast aside and labeled as quacks. It was incredible that we were seeing this unfold before our eyes. And I've never been one to default to um, deferring to authority as my sort of preset position. I always like to read and research and educate myself, as I think is, or it should be, the American way in general. People should be skeptical. But all of these narratives were pushed by the mainstream media and many in politics and part of the large organizations, NIH, CDC, et cetera, and were just accepted wholesale, despite the fact that there were many experts more qualified than those who were the mouthpieces for the establishment, who were speaking in direct opposition to this. But you were completely demonized. I mean, Dr. McCullough's episode, I think, of Joe Rogan was taken down. Dr. Robert Malone's episode taken down, and it was so obvious to so many of us early on that this was a pernicious effort at silencing the voices of experts who were speaking out against this campaign. And I was just curious if you could reflect on what your experience has been over the past few years in dealing with that, whether it's interacting with fellow physicians or hospitals or patients for that matter. What has it been like for you as a physician who is willing to speak out, one of few who is willing to speak out, especially in your field, over the past few years?
Well, yeah, thank you. I can address that. Listen, I I had some trauma earlier in life where I really never had a voice. I felt like I never had a voice. I was
Mm,
always censored. I won't go into it. I'm writing a new book, should be published next month. It's on the vaccine and pregnancy, and it was very difficult for me to write because my editor wanted a lot of my personal history and how I got here, and some of that's in there. But suffice it to say, with some childhood medical illnesses and trauma,
mm.
uh, I really didn't have a voice, and I really wasn't listened to, and I've been in that shadow my whole life. But God has given me a voice now, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And I
Amen.
have a huge burden of truth telling. I, uh, you know, God showed me this truth in a very, very, very powerful way. His truth of what's been happening, and I take that very seriously because that's one of the greatest gifts I've been given. Any human being can be given is
Hmm.
truth. And Peter McCullough uh, and I, we've known each other, I think, personally, and gotten to know each other pretty well. He's a very, very busy man. I don't know, for a couple of years, but way beyond early in this pandemic, when I saw him speak, um, and again, I'll be totally transparent, with you. I am a Christ follower. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and have been so since I was 3 years old, when I remember my mother giving me that. And I've been a student of the Bible and a student of the prophetic for my whole life. Uh, by no means am I a saint. Okay, I'm a sinner just like the rest of us, but I have to struggle with my sin like the rest of us do in the world. That's our nature. But I'm not a prophet. I'm not I don't have dreams. I don't have visions. But when I first saw McCulloch, okay, come out, I was struck with just a download that this is the man. If there's one person in the world most qualified to lead the world out of the most catastrophic, clustered foobar in the history of medicine, it's this one man, Peter McCullough. I knew that very shortly after watching him in 2020, and he empowered me, and I never, in my wildest imagination, I knew that I would ever be his, working with him and come to know him and testify in the Senate with him and be at all these meetings with him and be his partner now at the wellness company. Never in my wildest imagination. But I knew that this man, the more I've gotten to know him and I've met his wife, he's a real deal. And this is the man who can lead us out. So he takes a central role in my book. The book, I don't have it. It's been written for 6 weeks, and my co-author is working on it now. But one of the central figures of this book is, and I don't have time to get into it here, but my mother was my spiritual mentor. And she was a labor and delivery nurse at the University of Michigan, and she taught me she delivered me at home, interestingly, but
Wow.
she taught me very early in life, and from her textbooks, about a hero that has spoke to me my whole life, Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis, Dr. Semmelweis, and you probably don't know and never heard of him, but just to say that Dr. Semmelweis was about 170 years ago. He died a young man, but he was brought us through one of the greatest obstetrical scourges, one of the greatest in the history of medicine up until now. And it was in the mid 1800s at Vienna Lying Hospital when, and this is a difficult subject to talk about with where you're at now with your beautiful wife and about to have a baby, but that back in Vienna in the mid 1800s at Vienna Lying Hospital, University of Vienna Medical School, almost 50% of the young beautiful mothers that went in to have a baby left in the morgue. They left in the morgue because of the obstetrical scourge of the exact same stuff that's going on now. So I read that book in my adolescence, and my mother being a labor and delivery nurse, I went into OB. So Dr. Semmelweis I've been really focused in OCD about what he did back then. Basically, he discovered the cause of what was killing all these women dying from sepsis after birth. It was very simple, very simple. The doctors and the young physicians and medical students in training were going from the autopsy room straight up to labor and delivery, infecting the new mothers, and they die of what they called childbed fever. So sometimes 50% of them. It was horrible. But never in my life did I ever imagine that I would be facing a situation in age 68 to 70 of my career where I would be facing a scourge globally that makes the scourge of Vienna look like a walk in the park. Honestly, I mean, so this, I mean, God has prepared me for this, and in this book, I compare what I call the Semmelweisian heroes of that I focused on in that I'm familiar with, and Dr. Semmelweis's. They rejected him. They attacked him. In essence, they murdered him. They put him in an insane asylum where he was killed and died. Interestingly, as a young man at age 47. Why? Because he found out what the cause was of all those deaths, and it ruffled the feathers of the powers that be. So, Dave, this is exactly what Solomon says in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, I believe. Time is circular, it's not linear. There's nothing new under the sun. What has been done will be done again. Exactly the same sin of humanity, pride, arrogance, power that dominated the scourge and killing of all those women and he discovered the cure, they blew him off. They didn't want to change. It's the exact same thing going on now. Exactly the same, except it's not limited to one city. It's limited to the whole globe.
Yeah.
So in this book, Dr. Peter McCullough is the prototype of Dr. Semmelweis. But so he kind of gets the Semmelweis Award in the book. So but also I review several other Semmelweisian heroes that I've already plastered all over my X account that will be in the book as well. All of them. Doc, you know them all. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, several of them: Pierre, Corey, Paul, Merrick,
Yep.
Rich Bartlett. I mean, the list goes on, and especially, let's not forget Dr. Christiane Northrup. Let's not forget the OBs, because I know that Peter McCullough's not an OB, and Dr. Semmelweis and I and some others are, but let's get some OBs in there. Dr. Christiane Northrup, probably one of the most famous OBs in the world, at least that has had more influence in my career than any other obstetrician in the world. She's no longer practicing, but she was one of the dirty dozen information spreaders, along with Peter McCullough at the onset. But I have also some younger Semmelweisian heroes. Dr. Dan McDyer over in St. Augustine, Florida, and Dr. Kimberly Biss in St. Pete, Florida. We're the only 3 OBs in Florida that have come back and come out and aggressively spoke this out. Michelle Gershman, my postpartum nurse whistleblower over in Fresno, California, and so many others. You got Dr. Lee Merritt. You got Dr. Molly James. You got just so many others, and I wish I could mention them all here.
Well, no, I think that's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to the book. And it's interesting you brought up Semmelweis, because I am familiar. I did my undergrad in biochem and genetics, and then I went on to a PhD program in biochemistry, and I left the academic institution in large part because of the bureaucratic nature underlying it. And since I've been outspoken over these past few years, I've been in touch with a lot of my former peers so I was in my PhD at UC Berkeley. And it's funny that you bring up Semmelweis, because in conversations I've had with them, we've discussed, who are the people that end up being right historically. It's generally those regarded as heretics by the institutions, right? And Semmelweis is pretty standard learning when you're learning about the germ theory of disease, Lord Lister, etc. The etiology of childhood fever. Yep, yeah, there it is. And when I talk to these individuals, because what has happened is, as I've been more outspoken on my social media and the podcast and everything, I've been in touch with some of these folks, and they'll concede in private that they agree with me. And they say,
there he is.
Yep, there he is. For those watching the video version, you can see a picture here of Dr. Semmelweis. The etiology,
yeah,
the concept, and the prophylaxis of childbed fever. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, pride is pretty ubiquitous throughout academic institutions. And some of these people I've had conversations with who were in my program at Berkeley or at NC State, where I did my undergrad research, they'll agree with me in private, and they'll say, yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Of course, cloth masks don't mitigate the spread of respiratory viruses. I mean, there are publications going back decades on this. It's pretty standard knowledge. Of course, an mRNA vaccine in a nanolipid vesicle isn't going to stay localized to the intramuscular site of injection. Of course not. But they're terrified to say it publicly because they're getting their funding from the NIH, right, or the NSF, or any number of institutions that essentially says toe the line, or we're going to pull your funding and your livelihood will cease to exist. And so they're terrified to speak out. And so it's very interesting that you bring up that story because, whether it's the heliocentric model of the solar system, right? Or
Galileo.
yeah, or the germ theory of disease, or no matter what it is, there are these instances in our history in science and medicine where there was one or a handful of individuals standing up against the institutions who ended up being right. And they were
That's
often,
right.
yeah,
That's right. Your point's so well taken. What I would say is that I've always despised groupthink, and when
agreed.
you look at the history of this, you're right. The arrogance of the academic, and I had a lot of pressure in my career to go to a fast track academic type of a practice,
Mm,
kind of like Dr. McCulloch has done. I never went that route because I abhorred groupthink. I didn't want to be told what. One of the lessons I learned from Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis is, and I'll speak to him like he spoke to me, at least in my mind, as my father used to call me, Jimbo, stay the hell away from the academics. It's like, don't take money from people to tell you what to study. Don't take money from people that want to tell you how to think.
yes.
Design your own clinical studies, get your own funding for your clinical studies, and design studies like I did, simple studies that can make a difference in your patients' lives. And that's really kind of what I focused on. And I've never taken a dime from any of these pharmaceutical companies. And I never wanted to be in a fast track academic program and have a division director or a chair woman or chairman telling me what to study and where to get my money from and what I should study. No, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Never participated in that. Uh, the great thinkers have are we're rejects. We
Hmm.
come from we're mocked, we're scourged, we're the riffraff from the edge of society that are rejects. That's what we are, but
Yeah.
we're in good company.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And one good thing that's come out of all of this, I think, in this era of thinking is the decentralization of media. Think back to just a decade ago when we didn't have all of these various platforms where we can have a voice. And imagine that the COVID-19 pandemic happened during that period of time when all messaging was filtered through just a few mainstream institutions. Think of how bad it would have been then when someone like yourself or Dr. McCullough or Robert Malone or the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, any of the people we've talked about couldn't even have a voice at all. So as bad as it has been and as tough as the fight has been, I think that one glimmer of hope is that media has been decentralized. The cat is out of the bag, so to speak, and now they can't put it back in. I mean, there is no way. CNN's listenership, viewership is nothing compared to a lot of these large podcast platforms, right? And I'm so thankful that we do have the platforms that we have where I can have conversations with individuals such as yourself. And I think people are waking up. And you know in the time of Semmelweis, he had no opportunity to speak to thousands of people about his ideas, right? And so I am hopeful because of that.
Yeah, I think that we do have more of a platform, but we also have more of a platform to be censored.
True.
And
Yes.
going up to the 100,000 foot or the couple mile high view, satellite view, if you will, of what's going on. Let's not forget. Okay, in 2021, my wife Maggie is an attorney. We published extensively together. We've published some really, really important stuff on America Out Loud. And if you just go to America Out Loud and put Maggie Thorp, JD, Jim Thorp, MD. We've got just in the last year, 12 or so really important publications on there. But one of the things that Maggie and I have essentially proven, I believe, is that our federal government and these pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer and Moderna, they went after my patients. They went after women. They
Mm-hmm.
went after women for two reasons. Number one, you'll know this, it's women. It doesn't matter the culture, the color of your skin, the country of your origin, your ideology, your faith background. Women make all the healthcare decisions, period.
100%.
The vast majority of them, way over 90%. That's one reason they targeted women. The second reason was only women can get pregnant. Now, it's only women. Spoiler alert, all you young people that are being taught,
Yeah,
men
I
don't
was
get
going to say
pregnant.
that's heresy these days. You can't say that.
Well, but they targeted pregnant women. So they targeted because it's a marketing ploy straight from Deputy Secretary Mark Weber, former
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. He bragged about this, okay, in the early 2021. We go after women. They're low-hanging fruit, okay? Go after women. They make all the healthcare decisions. That's been well known. Number two, go after women because they get pregnant and they represent the most vulnerable population. So if we can spend billions of dollars spreading the lie that the experimental novel gene therapy is safe, effective, and necessary in the most vulnerable women, most vulnerable population on the earth, that's pregnant women, then it follows logically every human being on the earth needs one. If the most vulnerable population, pregnant women, are affected, it's necessary for them to have this vaccine, it's safe and effective and necessary, everybody in the world needs one. So they went after women, two reasons, those reasons. Number one, marketing. Number two, to push the false narrative in pregnant women, the most vulnerable. How did they do that? Well, in February 28th, 2021, February 28th, 2021, the 10-week, it was really a 12-week, 90-day market rollout of Pfizer's initial data, which is legally mandated. It started December 1st, but really they didn't start injecting until mid-December 2020. So it's 10 weeks. And that data, which they provided, the FDA, the CDC, the HHS, and by the way, the whole world, because a whistleblower leaked it a month later. I had it a month later. And it was the deadliest drug ever rolled out in the history, according to Pfizer. And for those of you who don't believe me that are listening to this, go to DuckDuckGo or don't use Google. Go to a search engine and put in Pfizer 5.3.6, Pfizer 5.3.6 PHMPT, PHMPT, and bring up the PDF and you'll see it. You'll see it. Go to page 7. On page 7, there's a table. 3/4 of the way down the table, there's fatalities. 1,223 dead in 10 weeks. That's the deadliest drug ever rolled out to the public. What
Wow.
did our officials do? What did your government do? Spoiler alert, your government doesn't give a crap about you. They are killing you. They're injuring you. They tried to hide that and conceal that information for 75 years. And if that's not bad enough and horrific enough, they rolled out a fifth generation psychological PSYOPs program to convince the world that it was safe, necessary, and effective for pregnant women, even. So everybody in the world needs one. That's what they did. That's what they did. That's how much they want to kill you and keep you unhealthy. That's your federal government. And my wife and I proved that. We suspected this because I began aggressively attacking the American Board of OBGYN, the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, and the American College of OBGYN, the three organizations that perpetrated these crimes in targeting women and still do to this very day. They still do. They target these women. Okay, so we proved, Maggie did a FOIA request between HHS, CDC, and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. They were bought through the COVID-19 Community Core in early 2021, the same time when they knew it was the deadliest medication ever rolled out. They roll out billions of dollars to over 300 influencers to bribe them with contracts, which they took money, they signed the contracts, they're not allowed to deviate. They entered cooperative care agreements, legally binding with the federal government, that's highly unethical, highly illegal, highly immoral, and they're not allowed to deviate from that death narrative. To this very day, these three organizations, the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, to this very day, October 18th, 2023, are pushing this drug in pregnant women globally despite the avalanche of data. They can't get out of those contracts. If they do, they'll have to pay all the money back.
Wow.
So I'm just and you know, I was just fired from the Sisters of St. Mary's Health Center, one of the largest Catholic healthcare systems in the country. They're almost a $10 billion company based out of St. Louis. Yeah, you thought I was from St. Louis. No, I'm not. I did telemedicine from there. But listen,
Okay.
I was their number one producer in the division of the department. I was the most experienced, the most published, and according to many internal sources, the most loved. I was fired earlier this summer. They didn't want to fire me, but they took $306.9 million. Okay. And now they took $306.9 million. And so, despite the fact that I was their, by far and away their number one income producer and the most experienced, the most published, and by the way, I've published over 75 articles now just in the last 3 years on COVID. And all those articles were given to my chain of command at Sisters of St. Mary's Health, SSM Health in St. Louis. But Mr. Kevin Elledge got me on the phone and said, "Hey, we love you. You're the model physician. Your ethics and integrity are beyond reproach, but we're going to fire you because we're having financial difficulties."
Mm.
Bull crap. They weren't having financial. They Tucker Carlsonized me because I testified in the Senate. I was on Tucker Carlson, and just like Fox News, Tucker Carlsonized him, the number one income producer. They turned around and Tucker Carlsonized me, probably because I was on his show or whatever. But the audacity, they lied. They said that we're firing you for no cause. You've been a model. Well, that's not true. That's not true at all. So, but I don't want to pick on SSM Health. I miss the people up there. They're great people. I got a lot of friends up there, and and I still do. And I don't want to pick on SSM Health, but it's true. They're not allowed. They've pushed this vaccine. They've hurt a lot of their employees, and they've hurt a lot of their patients. And so has every other healthcare system in the United States of America. You know, you can go and you can see which healthcare systems have taken this massive amount of money. They all have. They all have.
Wow.
You know, Maggie and I were wrong. It wasn't hundreds of millions. It wasn't hundreds of billions of dollars. It's $5 trillion that this government has. $5 trillion as mid-August was reported in the Federal Journal. $5 trillion have been perpetrated to destroy our economy and to push this false narrative. And you know, he who pays the piper calls the tune. $5 trillion, you can do anything. They own all the medical journals. They own all the boards. They own all the licensing agencies. They own, they've perpetrated all these crimes against physicians and patients and healthcare. You know, Dr. McCullough, Dr. Corey, you know, Dr. Ryan Cole now, Dr. Rennie Moon, all of us, you know, they've perpetrated crimes against us. And it's just unbelievable, but it's not surprising.
Wow. Yeah. As you were saying all of that, I pulled up the CDC official statement on the vaccines and pregnant women, and this is updated September 22nd, 2023. Right here, big bold letters. What you need to know. Everyone ages 6 months and older is recommended to get the updated vaccine. This includes people who are pregnant, breastfeeding, trying to get pregnant, or those who might become pregnant in the future. Infants ages 6 months and older are recommended to get the updated vaccine, even if born to people who were vaccinated or had COVID 19 before or during pregnancy. So, to this day, as you said, even the CDC, the official statement, despite studies that have shown to the contrary, and I'd love to get into that a little bit, the granular details of what actually is the effect of this drug on pregnant women and their babies. The statement is still there saying if you're pregnant, get the shot. If your child is 6 months or older, get them the shot. It's incredible. And
And Dave, if you can go on that and just Google search, not Google, DuckDuckGo or whatever, James A. Thorp, MD, open letter to the American Board of OBGYN.
all right, let's pull it up here. Yeah,
And
I only DuckDuckGo. I don't Google.
you pull that letter up, and I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but that letter that I wrote, that came after many, after a year of attacking the American Board of OBGYN because they illegally threatened me and every other one of their constituents, 61,000. They threatened them. They threatened them. And so this letter that and I would encourage all of your audience to read. I crafted this letter, and I don't mean to pat myself on the back or brag about it. This is probably, I think, the most eloquent and important communication I've ever written. And I submitted it to my colleagues. This is an open letter to the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology almost 2 years ago now. It's
Mhm.
like been 20 months, 22 months. And that was in January of 2022. And in that letter, it's irrefutable documentation. In this letter. I mean, how many pages is it? This was over 1,016 references that I referenced in this letter. 1,016 peer-reviewed medical journal publications in just 12 months from the world body of medical peer-reviewed literature documenting death and severe injury after COVID-19 vaccines in just 12 months.
Wow.
That letter was so well written, so well referenced, so overwhelmingly, they know they're dead wrong. They've never responded to me, never responded to me. And they withdrew all their threats. They're no longer threatening me. They're recertified. I'm board certified for life. I was board certified in OBGYN in 1985. I have lifetime board certification. But because of my incredible, I have just OCD about staying up to date and studying and, I voluntarily recertify every single year. And so, but they're happy to recertify me through all the, despite this letter. I mean, uh, probably there's afraid. I think the American Board of OBGYN, the American College of OBGYN, and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine they know that I'm right. I'm one of their senior members. I've been honored in several ways by all of these organizations my entire career, board of directors, research awards, all this stuff. They know I'm right. They broke the golden rule of pregnancy. They know they're dead wrong, and they can't come after me. If they do come after me, come on, bring it on. Okay. They're going to
Yeah.
get sued, and they're going to have a process called discovery. And discovery will destroy these organizations because they sold their souls to the devil. They are pushing this drug. They are killing and injuring pregnant women and women globally, and they know it, and they're doing it because of unscientific, and they've captured all the medical journals. So all the BS, the bull crap they've published in the medical journals after they committed this horrible sin, that will never justify them. We have the goods on them. We know the truth. The truth will set you free.
Yeah, and I have it pulled up here, and I'll link to this in the show notes so everyone listening can go to this letter. But yeah, the following 16-page letter with 1,019 peer-reviewed references about the dangers of the COVID-19 vaccine was written by Dr. James Thorp, OBGYN and maternal fetal medicine specialist, to the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology in response to their statement regarding dissemination of COVID-19 misinformation. I'll provide this to all my listeners and viewers so that they can check it out. And look, it says a lot that you had to specifically tell me to use DuckDuckGo instead of Google, right? They're trying to cover this stuff up. Um, it's irrefutable. And, for practicality's sake, Dr. Thorpe, what so, to women listening who are considering getting pregnant, um, who are pregnant or otherwise, let's say, just for the purposes of our conversation, let's say there's someone who unfortunately fell for the propaganda, we'll say, and got the shot, and maybe a booster, just we'll keep it general. And they're terrified now because they have done their research and they've read up on the fact that, you know, um, mRNA is found in breast milk post vaccination and in all the things that we now know. What advice would you give to them? What should they do? Because I'm sure they're scared and they're like, oh my goodness, should I even pursue getting pregnant knowing that I've taken this shot?
Yes, I want you to have hope. First of all, uh, the first thing you need to recognize is don't get the hell out of your healthcare systems. Don't trust anybody in the healthcare system. Don't trust any of the OBGYN doctors. They're all purchased. They're all captured. There's
Mm,
no such thing as a private relationship with an OBGYN doctor. They're all captured. If you want to know the truth, just ask your doctor, do you recommend the COVID-19 vaccines? Just ask them. And or what is your stance on the COVID-19 vaccine? If they try to whitewash it, get the hell out of it. Just walk away. Come over to the wellness company. You want to get healthy, contact us at the wellness company or another parallel healthcare system. But yes, you have hope. The first thing is don't take any more vaccines. Listen, literally, they knew it was the deadliest vaccine ever, the deadliest drug ever rolled out, and they're still pushing it on you. What does that tell you? That tells you you can't trust them. They're trying to
right,
kill you. They're
right.
trying to kill your baby. Don't trust them. Leave them. Get the hell out of this corrupt healthcare system. Get the hell out of the insurance. This is a military medical industrial complex trying to kill you and keep you ill. They don't care about you. These healthcare systems, like my former, taking massive amounts of money. Listen, the wellness company will never enter into that blood money contracts, illegal, unethical, immoral contracts with the federal government to keep you sick and to push deadly drugs on you. We'll never do that. Foster Colson at the wellness, the founder, Peter Gillily, all my partners, we will never do that. We don't care about profit. We care about your wellness. But I want you to get, yes, you have a lot of hope. We have products at the wellness center. We have
Mm,
expertise at the wellness center. Don't take any more shots. Just focus on wellness. If you have had symptoms since you were vaccinated, then we can deal with those. We need to boost your immune system. We may need to get you on some repurposed medications, such as ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, that are very safe. We have safe nutraceuticals to boost your immune system. We have the spike support for adults, the spike support for children. We have an emergency medical kit. Every family household in this country or world should have one of these. Extraordinarily important. So yes, we are working on products. I'm specifically working on a product for pregnant women that will be the equivalent of spike support. We don't want our pregnant women using the current spike support for
okay.
adults and children just because they are nutraceutical. They're all safe nutraceuticals, but some of them are some of the components are not. I haven't. I'm not comfortable yet with the safety profile in pregnancy. specifically the nattokinase,
Okay.
may I'm just a little bit concerned about a few reports. I'm not sure about the safety in pregnancy. These are very potent, safe drugs, very important for non-pregnant individuals. But we're working on similar supplements, and we're working on supplements for couples, infertile couples, a guy and a gal infertility formula to help prepare you for and optimize your pregnancy outcome. But there's simple steps. Vitamin D3, hugely important for all couples to push that levels up to the upper limits of normal. Vitamin C. We're looking at other, if you're not pregnant, the bromelains, the
Hmm.
nattokinase, the iodines, the vitamin C, the zinc. These are all extremely important. And by the way, the hydroxychloroquine is extraordinarily safe in pregnancy. You ask me what was the first thing that raised my eyebrow. I'll tell you what it was, Dave. I've been using hydroxychloroquine in pregnancy for 4 decades. Listen, we use
Wow.
it in women of reproductive age that have autoimmune disease. Over the last 4 decades, many of them get put on hydroxychloroquine and have been, not just by me and not just by OBGYN doctors or maternal fetal medicine doctors, but by family practice doctors, by internal medicine doctors, by rheumatologists. We've been doing that for years. Women are at greater risk for autoimmune disease than are age-related men by 3 to 10-fold, depending on the disease. So I've had massive number of women of reproductive age on hydroxychloroquine. They get pregnant. We don't even take them off in the first trimester. It's very, very safe and effective. It's very effective. It was very effective against SARS-CoV-1. We know it's safe and effective, yet they illegally, unethical, impugned the safety of that drug in order to illegally roll out the emergency use authorization
Right,
illegally.
because if there was any valid treatment, then they couldn't get the drug passed under an EUA, correct? So they had
That
to demonize
that
hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, all
and in
these safe
doing
drugs.
so, killed and injured way over 50 million, probably close to 100 million people globally. Killed and injured close to 100 million people globally between the impugnment of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and not allowing patients to get early care. They've killed and injured probably close to 100 million people globally, I would guess.
Wow.
The vaccine has killed and injured far more people than COVID has. So this is really, really, really important. But yes, there is hope. Open up your eyes. Don't be afraid. You can safely undergo pregnancy. Just stay healthy. Stay away from more vaccines. Don't trust your doctors. Don't trust your government. Don't trust the bull crap. Listen, this government is captured. They're off the rails. They're now trying to start World War III for diversion because
Yeah.
they know how many people they've killed. They know how many people have skeletons in the closet. Kind of like what Hillary Clinton said 10 years ago. If I go down, everybody else in Washington, D.C. is going to go down. She said that because they've performed crimes against humanity. They've, untold, horrible, crimes that not only crimes against humanity, but also crimes of against our Constitution, selling
Yeah.
out our country. So they know that if they lose power, there's going to be a Nuremberg, and many of them may be subjected to the death penalty or lifetime imprisonment. Many people. So they'll do anything to avert that. They all have their safe bunkers. They don't care about starting World War III. They want to depopulate the earth anyways.
So I agree with all of this. Something that I think about often though, Dr. Thorpe, is it's blatantly obvious that all of this is taking place to anyone who possesses an ounce about objectivity and observational skills and critical thinking. But to what end? So it's obvious that, for lack of a better way of putting it, they want to keep us sick, dependent, weak, controllable, I suppose. But why? What is the point? I mean, short-sightedness would tell you it's all greed, right? That obviously people are lining their pockets, but what's the end game if you had to sort of hypothesize based on everything you're
Yeah,
seeing?
yeah. The end game is the same end game that Satan has had since the creation of mankind in every single generation. It's the same. It's the
Mm,
exact same. Look at what Wesley Clark said. General Wesley Clark said, like within weeks after 9/11, he's called into the Pentagon and you know debriefed. And this is a matter of public record. He's going on and he's getting briefed by some of his underlings that said, well, you know, General, uh, they want to start another war over this. And Clark said, well, for what? And I
mm,
said, well, well, here's a plan. And he brought up documents. They wanted to take down 7 Middle Eastern countries in 5 years. I'm not making this up. I mean, Iran, Syria, uh, let's see, Afghanistan, Lebanon, um, a few others that I'm missing. Go back and pull the interview up. This is the this is a decompensation of exactly what Dwight Eisenhower said in January of 1961. The greatest threat is the
military industrial
military industrial
complex.
complex.
Yeah.
And then what did Kennedy? Kennedy knew that too, because in June, in his famous speech to the American University in Washington, D.C., in June of 1963, he said, the CIA needs to be destroyed. They need to be shred into 1,000 pieces and cast to the wind, which is a famous quote,
Right.
not from his, but that there's a lot of historical significance in that quote. And then 6 months later, he was murdered for that by the CIA, and 5 years later, his brother was murdered for that, for trying to get to the bottom of that. And so nobody has touched them since. They've continued to grow in power to the point where we are, I hate to say this as a veteran, I'm an Air Force veteran. I signed on the dotted line to give up my life for this country and to serve the Constitution. We have become the great Satan. Nobody's, since the two Kennedys were murdered by our government, the military industrial complex has developed in the military medical industrial complex. They own the world. They have destroyed many, many countries, killed millions of people in their quest for disaster capitalism. In other
Mm,
words, to completely destroy a company by military operations and then to gain by it, to gain from it by rebuilding and by contracts and by rebuilding these countries and subjecting the citizens of that country. We have a horrible history of doing that. Just read Disaster Capitalism by Naomi Klein.
yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I was having a conversation with a man whom I respect greatly and consider to be very knowledgeable and a mentor. And we were talking about Ukraine and the massive amount of money that has been spent on Ukraine to fund the military industrial complex, right? I mean, blatantly obvious. And he said, well, that's nothing. Just wait until you see the amount of money that'll go into rebuilding after all of this. And it's just one big circular racket that the same players, the same global players take advantage of. And we saw it in the Mideast, in the global war on terror. And you keep seeing it over and over. And, Chuck Schumer gave it away when he said about Donald Trump making the intelligence agencies mad. He was like, and he said
That's
this
right.
publicly, right? He said
That's right.
it's something
Every
like
which
that
way to Sunday.
to
He has no
destroy you.
idea. He's
Yeah.
going to just get destroyed every which way to Sunday. Yeah, he was prophetic. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely right. That's a good call on that one. It's who was it? It was Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld. Remember this?
Oh yeah.
2 or 3 days before 9/11. What was the big news item that he came out with? Do you remember?
Was it the amount of money that was
Yeah.
unaccounted for? Yeah.
Like we seem to have lost, what was it, $3 trillion or two?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
lost $3 trillion. Yeah, the Pentagon lost $3 trillion. Oh, really? And then all of a sudden we have 9/11. Where? How do you lose $3 trillion?
Meanwhile, we get audited if our taxes are
Right,
off by
right,
$20. It's
right.
insane,
But the
absolutely insane.
$3 trillion now is nothing compared with the $5 trillion we invested to weaponize this mRNA vaccine.
It's
$5
incredible.
trillion.
So, okay, what I'm getting out of this though is there is hope. You know, if you're an expectant mother, if you're a woman who made the mistake and got the shot, unfortunately due to misguided advice you were given by a medical provider who is bought and paid for, right? Don't give up hope. You know, don't think that you can't reproduce, right? And there are many mitigating measures you can take to ensure that you do it safely and healthily. You know,
Yes.
I'm so thankful. You know, myself, my wife, our current child, and you know, our child who will be here any day. We're not vaccinated. You know, we did not. It was all from my perspective, just from the very beginning. I was just like, this doesn't make sense to me. There's no need. And even from the perspective of, I mean, there are so many perspectives you can take that do not justify getting vaccinated with the mRNA shots. But just for the simple fact that we're in our mid 30s, we're healthy, and the mortality rate is next to nothing. We both got the Delta strain, and took ivermectin. You know, we zinc, quercetin, vitamin D, vitamin C. Um, Again, our diets are very healthy, and we're very active people. 2 days, 3 days, it was a cold like symptoms, and we were completely fine.
Yeah.
And it's just you know, so I thank God every day for that we had the foresight and the skepticism when all of this came out, and I was getting castigated by family members, former peers and colleagues, and you know, people like, so I brought this up in my conversation with Robert Seek when he was on the show, and you know, you mentioned ask your doctor what their thoughts are on the vaccine, and I had a similar experience when I went to see my primary physician just for my annual checkup, and you know, he just his default position was you need to get the vaccine, and I was like, well, hold on, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this from a mechanistic perspective, because that's how I think, because that's what my background is in. You know, mechanistic biochemistry is what I really am passionate about, or was when I was part of that world. I was like, it's a stabilized mRNA transcript. It's in a nanolipid vesicle, and they're saying that it'll stay localized to the site of injection. How? And he was like, literally, Dr. Thorpe, he was like, I don't have time to research these things. It's safe and effective. There are experts who have testified to that. You just need to trust me. Get the vaccine. You'll, you know, if you get it. And this was right on the heels of the CDC having to admit that the vaccine doesn't prevent uh, getting COVID-19, because they were saying initially, and Joe Biden even said this publicly, if you get the shot, you won't get COVID-19. That quickly was blown apart. And then if you get the shot, you can get it, but it'll, you know, reduce your symptoms. And that wasn't obvious to anyone at all. And he's just, I'm sitting here watching this MD fumble over his words, try to tell me the reasons why I need to get this vaccination. And I'm like, look, man, none of this makes sense to me. I'm very healthy. There's no reason for me to get this shot. And the only reason you can give me is you just need to because I said so. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying that. And it seems that has been the message from basically all allopathic medical providers, sans a small handful nationwide. You just need to get it. You need to get it. You need to get it. Why? Because I said so. Don't ask questions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, your brilliant response reminds me of the clip that I saw, and oh my gosh, I wish I could get my hands on this. But do you remember when Fauci was going around and giving away these cars to trying to prey on the African American people
Yes,
because
yes, yeah.
their vaccine uptake? Well, by and large, the vaccine, my African American friends and patients, let me tell you something, they're a lot smarter than my Caucasian, my white friends and
They're
colleagues.
far more skeptical of,
Yeah, and
because of history, and how they've been
yeah,
treated by the medical establishment.
that's exactly right. Just look at the experiments, the Tuskegee experiments. But I
Exactly.
love this one clip. Honestly, they, you know, Dr. Fauci went up with his gang. There were probably 4 or 5 people, some media people there. The giveaway car goes up to this really poor, low-income house, and out comes this young African American man. And this young African American man, um, incredibly handsome dude, also incredibly brilliant dude. I mean, he wasn't. You wouldn't have guessed it because he came out of a low income house, and he wasn't garbed, in really expensive clothing. But
Sure.
this guy assaulted Fauci in an honorable way with the exact same data that you, as a brilliant PhD, Dave, just took down your doctor. He did the same thing on film with Fauci. He blew Fauci and Fauci just had to walk away. This young African American guy must have been your age. I don't know if he had a PhD or not, but he didn't look like he had a PhD, but he certainly sounded like he had a PhD. I mean, he just tore Fauci to shreds. Fauci just had to leave, and it's very, very disconcerting over the false claims that this government has made. Listen, just this month and this past month, this Pierre Corrine and the administration and all these healthcare officials, HHS, CDC, they're making illegal, fraudulent claims, false claims that they should be put in jail for, or they should be shut down for. They shut down physicians for, many physicians in the past for making similar claims about safe nutraceuticals.
Hmm.
They've shut down clinical, they've taken down physicians' offices, yet this illegal, unethical, murderous government of ours, they say you need to take this vaccine, you need to take the booster, you need to take it. It'll protect you from this new variant that's coming out. Otherwise, you're at risk for going to the hospital, going on a ventilator, and dying from COVID. That's a gross lie. They
Yeah.
have zero data. They can't look in the future. And by the time that they develop a vaccine, the rate of the changing of the rate of these new variants is so quick and is so short lived that by the time the vaccine comes out, they're on to another variant. So what they've said is completely lie, completely false. And here's the beauty of it: the American people know it.
Yeah.
All my friends and family members that have been, disagreeing with you and disagreeing with me, they don't have the ethical and moral integrity come up and say, hey, Jim, or hey, Dad, or, hey, Dave, you were right and I was wrong. There's very few people that can do that, but they know. They're voting with their feet. You know what? The vaccine uptake is down to 1 to 2% of this
Yeah.
ridiculous variant. What do
Yeah.
they? They're bloody morons. These nutcases. These nutcases are trying to convince the American people that, you need now your 8th shot and your 9th shot, and now you need to just get an mRNA vaccine twice a year, even if you're healthy. What did Biden say? Biden says, Florida, you got a hurricane come on you. Just go get a
Just get
vaccine. Everything will
vaccinated.
be fine. Yeah, okay, Joe. I mean,
Boy.
our government is off the rails, and
Yeah.
so is Canada's government.
Oh my
Canada's
gosh.
government is off the rails, and I don't think anything can depict their the how badly they're off the rails as the recent events. You have the chairwoman of the congressional committee on the energy and commerce. Kathleen Rogers, earlier mid last month, comes out. They're bringing out to the American people exactly what I've said for 3 years. HHS and CDC are above the law. They think they're above the law. They've been acting illegally for 18 months. Fauci and 14 other colleagues had no authority. They didn't even re-up their appointments. And they're trying to do it retrospectively after they've retired. No, that's illegal. And they've just stonewalled Kathleen Rogers and these three other. The American people know it. Hey, listen, who's this nutcase premier Justin Trudeau? This
Oh my
nut
gosh.
job. He flies to on a state visit to the India. This did you hear this knucklehead nut job? He mentally ill, unstable fascist. He flies a state jet loaded with cocaine to India. This isn't Jim Thorp's opinion and allegation. This is from the Indian government. He had a plane load full of cocaine, and he's so stoned he can't participate in the state meetings. This is not Jim Thorpe. This is not, the truckers. This is the Indian government saying it. And then same
Wow.
thing with the White House. Our White House is loaded with cocaine. Where
Yeah.
the hell did that come from? Since
Hunter
when
Biden.
does the White House? Since when do we not investigate this? These governments are off the tracks. They are totally off the tracks. They're totally captured. They need to be legally brought down.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I was not aware of that Justin Trudeau story, but I'm definitely going to look into that. And I'm not shocked by it in the least. He is beyond. I mean, if it's possible to be worse than the United States, Canada is worse than the United States in all of the ways we've discussed. One thing I just want to correct because I don't want to be dishonest. I attended my PhD program, but I'm actually proud of the fact that I did not finish it. I left early. I I couldn't deal with the bureaucracy and the politicization of this thing that I was in love with, which was science. And once I got into it at that level, I just knew that it wasn't for me. 2 years into it, I had published enough and taught enough that Berkeley was nice enough to say you've definitely done enough to earn a master's degree. So I parted ways with UC Berkeley. I didn't finish my PhD, but
Badge
I
of courage for you.
everybody thought I was crazy because I had the NSF full graduate research fellowship. Everything was paid for. I was getting a salary stipend just to go to school and teach and do my research. I was actually, um, it's funny because a lot of the work I was doing was with mRNA. And so I'm fairly educated on the topic. And even considering all of that, just in the early stages of the pandemic, the quote pandemic, I was just objectively just not in any way trying to be political or anything. I was just trying to put out informative content about from my perspective as someone who has studied these things to a greater degree than the average American, right? And so I was just trying to put out useful information. And it was so obvious to me, Dr. Thorpe, that people, the American public writ large, had been ideologically captured, right? That we weren't dealing with a true intellectual debate. It was something far different. It was religious without God. It was fanaticism centered around the Church of Fauci, essentially. And that's when I really decided it combined with the fact that, as I mentioned to you earlier, many of my former colleagues and peers from the world of science were hook, line, and sinker bought into the narrative. That's when I knew something was really wrong. But anyway, that's a long way of saying that I don't want to be dishonest and try to convey that I have my PhD. I don't. I'm proud of that fact. And it took going and seeing the inner workings of academia for me to realize that because I'll be honest, I had a high level of deference for anyone with those letters after their name, as I was sort of conditioned to have, being brought up through the traditional educational institutions in our country. And after I actually got to work with a lot of these people who I seen speak and I read their work, and I had massive respect for and held up on a pedestal. I lost a lot of respect for academia. Now, that is not to say there aren't amazing scientists out there, but I had a massive problem with the lack of integrity and the bureaucratic nature of academic institutions at that level. So I just want
I
to be
can't
honest about that.
I can't tell you, Dr. Dave Hurt. Um, I can't tell you how proud I am of you.
Well, thank you.
And if you were one of my kids, I'd be so damn proud of you. And in the power and the authority of that has been invested in me by my Lord and Savior, I will turn around and formally, at least with under the power and authority that I have, I'm giving you an honorary PhD. All
Well,
right.
that means more than getting it from UC Berkeley. So thank
And
you.
you have an honorary PhD, and I'm also formally um, knighted you. So it's now
There we
Dave Hurt,
go.
Sir
Thank
Dave
you.
Hurt, and you're knighted into the Royal Society of Veritas Liberabit Vos. The truth will set you free.
Well, I appreciate that, and as I said, that means a lot more to me these days, after having experienced the past 3 years, than a formal degree ever would have. And it's we've been going for over an hour now, and I could probably go for hours longer, but I want to be respectful of your time. Um, to wrap this up and put a bow on it, from this point forward, we're in October of 2023. If you could give any advice to my average listener, and my listenership spans demographics, age ranges, we're global, but a lot of my listeners are in America. Right now, all things considered, the political climate, the medical climate, the economic climate in this country, what's your best advice for maybe a young person? Let's be a little more specific. A young person who's trying to navigate this crazy world, let's say 25 to 35 or so. A little selfish on my part because I'm 36. I consider myself still a young person, even though I'm edging out of that demographics. But what advice would you give, Doc? Because it's a crazy, overwhelming, convoluted time to be alive.
Well, get close to your Creator. Uh, get close to God. God is the source of truth and healing. Whatever your faith tradition is, um, spend time preparing. Listen, we're living in perilous times. We're living in end times.
Mm,
We are about, very likely, on the precipice of World War III. So we need to protect yourself with information. Everything is not as you think it is. Everything is delusional. Everything is upside down, as in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, put bitterness for sweet and sweet for bitter. You're living in an upside down world. You're being fed misinformation. Be very, very careful. Get out of the healthcare systems. There's emerging data where there's vaccine sham goes so far back than you could ever imagine. Be very, very leery of taking any vaccines or any therapies that your federal government, they've proven that they don't care about killing and injuring you. Be prepared. Get out of your healthcare systems. Come to a parallel healthcare system. I think the wellness company is the best one, but there's many of them. You got FLCCC with Pierre Corey and Merrick. You got, the other one, myfreedoctor.com by my
mhm.
hero, another Semel Weesian and Dr. Ben Marble. You've got many more. Get the hell out of the healthcare systems. They're captured. They're not helping you. They're not trying to keep you well. They're trying to keep you sick, and they're trying to suck you dry. So be careful of that. Come over to a healthcare system. Get your emergency medical kit. Listen, drugs are going to be hard to come by. They already are. We have the emergency medical kit at the wellness company has 8 life-saving drugs in there. Oh, they're not over the counter. These are prescribed drugs that may save your life. They're hard enough to get anywhere, even in good times right now on a weekend off hours. Buy this emergency medical kit for your family, and then look at some of the other products. Protect yourself. I'm Dr. Jim Thorp, maternal fetal medicine physician, obstetrician, gynecologist, coming to you from Gulf Breeze, Pensacola, Florida. It's been such an honor and a privilege to be with you, Sir Dr. Dave Hurt, and all of your incredible audience. And I'd love to come back on anytime.
Well, Dr. Thorpe, I thank you for your time. You've been incredibly gracious. I am honored to have you on, and I'm honored to be a part of what the wellness company is doing. For everyone listening, I'll put a link in the description, twc.health, and I'll give you a link where you can get a discount. But the emergency medical kits, as you've described, phenomenal product. Every household should have one. And I would just like to parallel everything you've said. I happen to be a Christian, and so I have massive respect for how outspoken you are about your faith. Being a medical doctor, again, it's so hard to find genuine people along those lines these days. And for myself and my family, you know, getting close to God, keeping our faith first and foremost, being as independent and as ruggedly individual as we can, making sure our household is taken care of and we're self-sufficient. These are the things we're focused on, making sure we have ample protection, which we do. All of you, take care of your bodies, take care of your minds, protect yourself, protect your family, get close to God. Everything the good doctor has said. Look, I really appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much. You are a lighthouse of hope in a dark night that we're all facing. So thank you for all you listeners. Until next time, keep your minds free.